What is up, everybody, and welcome back to the channel. This week we're checking out cover-up tattoos, TikTok edition. You know, you guys always do some incredible things on TikTok, and when I say incredible, I mean questionable. I know we're gonna see some bad ones, and I'm hoping we're gonna see some good ones. Either way, we're gonna have a lot of fun, so let's check them out. Once again, welcome back to the channel. And since you're here, why not subscribe? It's free after all. All right, let's check out this first cover-up. And this first one says, out with the old, in with the new. Cover-up tattoo. She's obviously covering up an ex-boyfriend's name. All right, and she's getting somebody else's name above that. And he's wiping it with no gloves. That is disgusting. It's also kind of disgusting to see her put another person's name above that tattoo because she's just gonna end up with another cover-up in the future. Not the smartest idea, kids. And the name's not even really covered up if we're being honest. You can still clearly see everything through those leaves. She's got Juan Carlos, which I guess could be two first names. And then she gets Luis Daniel, another two first names. But the part that really gets me is just him wiping it down with no gloves. That's the easiest way to pass diseases. He's gonna go home and pick his nose later and touch his eyeballs and just get all that shit in there, because I know he's not washing his hands. I mean, if I'm really being honest and breaking this tattoo down, the stencil really isn't that great either, which results in a not so great tattoo. Surprise! So I could definitely see a few more flowers being added in the future. Let's check out this next one. Come tattoo a cover-up with me. Stencil on. All right, we're covering up the name Jess, and I really hope he doesn't cover that up with solid black, because that's the easiest, most lazy way to cover up a tattoo. Finished piece. At least he's got gloves on, but you can clearly still see the name underneath. I wouldn't call this a cover-up, I would call this an addition. I mean, the tattoo's okay. This is definitely better than the last one, but as far as the cover-up goes, it's not really a cover-up. That is definitely Wish Daniel Silva. Or is Timu the new thing now? I don't know. I'm not the biggest fan of the way that the moon stops in the background. I know they were going for some sort of fade, but I probably would have just pushed that moon all the way to the bones. Now, I know I said that I didn't want them putting all that black, but at least that would have covered up the name. Especially when this thing heals, those blacks are going to get a bit lighter, so that name is just gonna shine through even more, and we're right back to step one. In this instance, I probably would have used a bit of color. Maybe the client didn't want it, but if you were to use some sort of dark reds or something like that, some purples, it would have definitely covered that name up a bit more than it is now. When it comes to a cover-up, you're trying to draw the attention away from the older tattoo. And with the design like this, there's an eyeball right in the middle of this thing, so that's where our eyes are immediately drawn. And it doesn't help being so close to that previous tattoo that it just becomes an eyesore. I still see it. So your best bet is just to rearrange the design or pick something completely different. But let's see what we've got next. Decided to cover up an ugly tattoo I got when I was 19. I'm gonna pause right here. This is a terrible idea. You're better off just blacking out your arms at this point, because I don't know what the f that is. You can tell there's some sort of like cathedral type structure at the top, but it's just covering up this massive black keyhole looking thing. It's not attractive, and it definitely doesn't work with the other side of this tattoo. I mean, the skulls and the snake look great, but what is going on up front? 5 hours later, best decision ever. That's what you think now. And it looks like the tattooer's taking this video in the dark. I mean, I would be too if I were trying to hide that thing, because I bet if the lights were on, you'd still be able to see that rose. There are a couple ways that I would have gone about this. First with laser, or the second being covered up with white or close to the skin tone, so that way you can have an easier time covering this up later. Not with this. I mean, the outside's really not bad. I think that's a cool design and it's a great placement. And I would probably keep the outside of my arm facing out wherever I went. I'm sure you're gonna get a lot of questions on what that big black thing is, and people are probably most definitely gonna know that it was a cover-up. I would most certainly call this a cover-up fail. So enough with that one, let's see what else we've got. Tattoo cover-up. So he's drawing some pink lines on this bear, and it looks like he's playing tic-tac-toe. What is going on here? I think he's just setting up the foundation of the cover-up. All right. Not so bad. I mean, there is a lot of black at the bottom, but at least it works with the entire tattoo. And I think this one's kind of interesting. I weirdly like the little black figure at the bottom. And again, the attention is being drawn away from that old tattoo and up toward this new face. So I think this one genuinely worked. And I wonder what's going on with this bear because it's only half colored. So I'm just wondering if the client couldn't sit through the pain or maybe the tattooer just got bored. But they were able to sit through this one in its entirety, so I'm assuming the tattooer just sucked. No. But again, I really don't mind this cover up. This one seems like it was one cohesive piece and it was thought out from the beginning-ish. So we got one decent cover up out of this. You know what? Let's keep a tally and see how many more good ones we come across. She said nobody wanted to cover her tattoo. And that face is busted. And it really doesn't look like he wants to cover it either. So let's see what he's done. Well, I'd still have to call this one a fail because I can still clearly see the eye right next to the new tattoo's eye. The idea of a cover-up is to completely cover up the previous tattoo, and this one didn't do such a good job. I don't really mind that they used the little ankh on top because that would have been a whole lot of black had he covered that up as well, but I'm just not a huge fan of all that black happening at the top. This just goes to show you that cover-ups aren't easy, folks. And I mean, you can tell from the bottom that this guy's a decent tattooer, but sometimes we're dealt a really rough hand. But unfortunately, just not a great cover-up. Mark it before cover-up. This is the worst tattoo I've seen in my life. Not me, because clearly I see a lot of bad tattoos. Let's see, session number 2. Session number 3. I'm gonna pause it right there. Did they just add like little millipede legs? Or what is going on here? Stay tuned for session 4. Oh, I'm tuned, buddy. Let's go. And it looks like they're using some white to add some designs. It kind of looks like sidewalk chalk. I would be very curious to see how this healed up because I know a lot of those whites are going to fade away and you're going to be left with somewhat of a half-assed image. And it's not even the best image if I'm being honest. Sometimes you can get away with that with really simple white designs on top of black, but not so much when it comes to white shading. You can almost always guarantee that that's gonna go away, or at least barely be visible. Does it look better than the previous tattoo? Maybe. Is it a good cover-up? I'd say not. And this original one also looks like a cover-up. She just doesn't learn. Just poop on top of poop on top of poop. Can I get a cleanup on aisle 4? Boy, this is one for the toilet tattoos. So let's chalk this up to another loss. Speaking of cover-up tattoos, you really need to be covering up your tattoos while you're in the sun. And whether or not you have tattoos, you really need to be protecting your skin from harmful UV rays. And you can do that with Mad Rabbit Defend, just one of the many products they offer at madrabbit.com. And don't forget to use code PONY20 at checkout to save 20% off your entire order. All right, let's get back to it. All right, this one says, I've done a bunch of huge cover-ups this year. And check these out. My client had a couple laser sessions done on this one. It was still challenging, and this is a pretty decent cover-up. Luckily with this one, she's not having to cover up a whole lot, and especially with that laser that's going on, it made it a bit lighter, making it a hair easier. I think this is a good example that you don't need to cover up an entire tattoo if you do like parts of it. You can just have a piece of it lasered and cover that up instead. And I think it flows together really well since there are all these surrounding flowers with it, and I think this really brings a nice focal point instead of having that angry looking mask. Oh, and this cat, this one might be a little more tough because of all that black. Well, let's see what she did. All right, she did say it was a really dark design and a super clever design to fix that. And I'd say so. I mean, there is a lot of black happening here, but it did cover up the tattoo really well. And even if this wasn't a cover-up, I'd still say that this tattoo is very solid. I kind of like all the blacks in the middle. While this was a really dark tattoo, probably not the easiest. Okay, again, really not a bad cover-up. And I really enjoyed the colors in this one. I mean, the blues work very well with the oranges and the purples work well with the yellows. It really does have great color theory. All right, and this one says, this one was my biggest one. Again, it doesn't look like the easiest of cover-ups. Let's see what she did. There is another one. I can't believe how well this turned out. Her words, not mine. So far, this one has to be my favorite one. And just like the last one, you can tell that Tracy really knows her color theory, just the way that these colors bounce off of each other so well. She's not just trying to cover up a tattoo, but giving the client a beautiful end result. If I didn't know there was something underneath this, I would have never guessed it was a cover-up. And Tracy's over here closing the gap. Now this one says, this one was also the case of being dark but old. And this kind of looks like a tattoo that I did in the early 2000s. It might have been my tattoo. And she covered it up with these purple lilacs. All right, this is the one that I'm not a huge fan of. With these light purples, I'm very curious to see how this is gonna heal up, and I'm almost certain that some of those blacks are gonna come back through again. And this one does look a little messier than the others, so she's not perfect. But let's see if she's got any more. This last one is super old and faded. This is definitely one of the easier cover-ups to deal with. And yeah, here we go. I think this one's pretty decent. I think the color choices in this tattoo are pretty interesting. I wouldn't say my first choice, but a successful cover-up nonetheless. So shout out to Tracy Marie. I think she did a great job with handling these cover-ups. So add it to the board. All right, this one says, getting my messed up tattoos fixed. We'll be the judge of that. What I'm getting covered up. 2 very, very bad tattoos. I believe it says Kate Ann, and whoever did those tattoos really shouldn't be tattooing, or at least lettering. Those are some big names. All right, here we've got the black shading, and I can still clearly see the name underneath. I'm hoping the color is gonna kind of help out with that. And not so much. I think the difficult part about this one is having these intersecting lines. The lines on the bow are flowing down, whereas the lines on the name are flowing across. So it just makes for a difficult cover-up if that's what the artist is going to use. As a matter of fact, this tattoo didn't even cover up the older tattoo on the side, so maybe these things should have been bigger, and they're already huge. All right, now that I see that they used blue in the background to try and mask the rest of that cover-up, but again, you could still clearly see those lines running through the bow. And guess what? She's still got a whole other session to cover up that Kate, which I'm guessing she's gonna be getting a matching bow, so I'm not super thrilled about this one. At least she is, and at least it looks better than the older tattoos. Let's see what's next. All right, this one says, covering a tattoo I did for a TikTok trend. A couple little cherry bombs covering up an Adult Swim tattoo. But if I were being honest, I probably would have covered up those Not You hearts over the Adult Swim tattoo. But that's just me. Let's see how they did. Oh yeah, good job. Not.
Okay. I'm not quite...
Yeah, I can still see this tattoo clear as day. You covered up nothing. It looks like they were gonna place the tattoo at the bottom of the leg and then last minute decide to cover up that Adult Swim tattoo. Last minute ideas usually aren't the best. Stick to your gut, people. And this design could have very easily had more black since they are bombs. Let's make this very dark image very light and see the tattoo underneath it. Great idea. I mean, the tattoo itself isn't horribly done. I just wouldn't have gone about it that way for a cover-up. Clearly the artist had no idea that they were going to be covering up a tattoo that day. It needed to be shaded a bit more. That's an understatement. But my neck was done. That's the weirdest looking neck I've ever seen. Also, I loved the tattoo, just not the placement. Yeah, I mean, I'm not a huge fan of the placement either. I think the original idea would have been a lot better. I mean, you could have easily just squeezed a bunch of other tattoos in there and had this thing hidden. But hey, party on, Wayne.
Party on, Garth.
Goofy choices. Let's see what's next. Okay, this one says, caution, here's my awful cover-up tattoo. And she's got a little heart with some Roman numerals. This one probably isn't gonna be the easiest to cover up. This is what I asked for. All right, I'm gonna stop it right there because there's no way that this is gonna cover up your existing tattoo. And if your tattooer told you any different, well, I'd find somebody else to work with. Let's see what they did. What I got. All right, let's bring up what you wanted with what you got. I mean, they're almost identical. And now it looks like this. Just what I'd expect. And you can still see the Roman numerals as well as the heart through this tattoo, and now you've just got a bigger mess to work with. At this point, just get it lasered, because I do hear that this is one of the easier spots to get lasered, being so close to your heart and around a major artery. I mean, it's still gonna hurt like hell, but at least it'll look a lot better. Are there gonna be any more good ones? Let's find out. All right, this one says, let's cover up this baby from 8 years ago. A little peacock feather on her back. Oh boy. This is not how you cover up a tattoo, just with a bunch of black. It looks ugly. It really just looks like a silhouette of the peacock feather. Oh, and she's washing it with a rag. Sick. I mean, gross. Sick. And by looking at the rest of this tattoo, you can tell that the tattooer probably does decent work, but they just don't know how to handle cover-ups. I mean, I do think you should be able to see the blades through that barbed wire heart, but this is where we're at. Luckily, I don't think most people are gonna notice because of that big black bullshit you've got on your back. So what's the lesson today here, kids? Make sure you go to a tattooer who knows what they're doing when it comes to cover-ups. Take a peek at their portfolio. Make sure you see at least a few tattoos that they've previously covered up, and they did them well. They could have some of the most amazing tattoos in their portfolio, but if they don't know how to handle a cover-up, things can go south very quickly. For me personally, if I had the choice, I'd never do a cover-up. I'd send them off to somebody who specializes in them, which most of the artists that we've seen today should have done just that. Because as you can see, a lot of tattooers just don't know what they're doing. If you are in the market to get a cover-up, a couple tips to help you along the way would be to get it lasered. When a tattoo's lightened up, it's a lot easier to cover, and you're less likely to end up with a disaster. Another thing to try, if you're an artist, is to have a session or two going over the existing tattoo with a color that's close to their skin tone. This can get tricky because you definitely don't want to chew up the skin too much, but it will make your job easier in the long run. And obviously make sure that the skin is healed before going back on your second session. But that's going to be it for this week, guys. Thanks again so much for watching, and remember, if you'd like to see your tattoos critiqued on this channel, you can do so by sending them to ponycritiques@gmail.com. Don't forget to like this video, and as always, I will see you guys next week.